host of USA Everyone, where we take you to a heart-stopping incident. But before we start today's story, tell us something. Have you ever encountered any paranormal activity? What have you done? If so, write in the comments below. Maybe the next episode will be on your experience. New Year's night on the prairie. This happened on New Year's Eve a few years ago, back in 2018. I was traveling from Fort Collins, Colorado, to my family's ranch near Casper, Wyoming. It's a quiet drive, lots of open fields and stretches of highway with barely any cars. I always loved the solitude of the prairie, but that night I would have given anything for some company. I'd been delayed leaving because of a project at work, so by the time I hit the road, it was already dark. My dad had told me to wait and drive in the morning, but I was stubborn. It's only a few hours, I thought. Besides, my dog Luna, a husky mix with boundless energy, was with me. She loved road trips. The first couple of hours were uneventful. The moonlight reflected off the snow-covered plains, making the landscape glow faintly. It was peaceful, until I hit a stretch of road near a place called Cedar Hollow. Luna started whining, which was unusual for her. She moved restlessly in the back seat, her nose pressed to the window. At first, I thought she just needed to stretch her legs, so I pulled over at a dirt clearing. The spot was surrounded by tall grass and patches of sagebrush, with no sign of life in any direction. I let Luna out, and she immediately bolted toward the edge of the clearing, sniffing wildly. I called after her, but she didn't listen. Typical Luna behavior. As I walked toward her, I heard something that made my stomach twist. It was a low, guttural growl, followed by the sound of something heavy moving through the grass. I froze, trying to spot whatever was out there. Luna had stopped dead in her tracks, her ears flat against her head. "Luna, come," I shouted, but she didn't budge. That's when I saw it, a dark shape moving through the grass, just at the edge of the moonlight. It was too low to the ground to be a person, but it was big, much bigger than any coyote or mountain lion I'd ever seen. I grabbed Luna by the collar and dragged her back toward the car. My heart was racing, and every instinct was screaming at me to get out of there. As I shoved her into the back seat, I glanced back toward the grass. The shape was gone. I told myself it was probably just a deer or some other animal, and got back on the road, but the uneasiness stayed with me. Luna wouldn't stop pacing in the back seat, and every so often she would let out a low growl. About 20 minutes later, my headlights illuminated something in the distance. A car parked at an odd angle on the side of the road. As I got closer, I saw a man standing next to it, waving his arms. He was wearing a thick coat and a beanie, but something about him seemed off. His movements were frantic, almost too frantic, and his face was partially obscured by the shadows. I slowed down, but Luna's growling got louder. My gut told me to keep driving, but the man started walking toward my car, shouting, "Help! Please, my wife's hurt." I rolled down the window just enough to talk to him. "What happened?" I asked. "She slipped on the ice. She's hurt bad." "Please, we need help," he said, his voice shaking. I glanced at his car. The passenger side door was open, but I couldn't see anyone inside. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. "I can call for help," I offered, reaching for my phone. No time," he shouted, his voice growing more desperate. He took another step toward my car, and that's when I noticed something in his hand. A long metal pipe, partially hidden by his coat. My blood ran cold. Without thinking, I hit the gas and swerved back onto the road. In my rearview mirror, I saw him throw the pipe down in frustration before running back toward his car. My heart was pounding, and Luna was barking uncontrollably. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station about 30 miles down the road. The clerk let me use their phone to call the police, but when they went to check the area, the car and the man were gone. By the time I left the gas station, my hands were still shaking. The clerk, an older woman with a sympathetic smile, had tried to reassure me. "It's not uncommon for strange things to happen out there," she said, as if that was supposed to make me feel better. "Especially on nights like this." Nights like this. The phrase stuck with me as I got back on the road. What did she mean by that? I wanted to ask more, but the way she'd said it, like it was some sort of local legend or old wives' tale, made me hesitant. And honestly, I just wanted to get to my family's ranch and put the whole night behind me. The next stretch of the drive was quieter, but the unease lingered. The moonlight on the snow, which had seemed so serene earlier, now felt cold and harsh. Shadows seemed to stretch and move in the corners of my vision, though I knew it was just my imagination. Luna had finally settled down, though she kept her head low, her eyes darting toward the windows every so often. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss a story that will haunt you in the best way possible. So let's continue today's mystery and scare-vile story. About an hour later, I reached a part of the highway that cut through a shallow canyon. The walls of rock rose up on either side, making the road feel narrow and claustrophobic. The wind had picked up, whistling through the gaps in the rock and rattling the windows of the car. I turned on the radio to distract myself, but all I could find was static and the faint hum of distant stations. Then, out of nowhere, the car's headlights flickered, just for a moment, but long enough to send a jolt of panic through me. "No, no, no," I muttered, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The last thing I needed was for the car to break down in the middle of nowhere. I glanced at the dashboard, but everything seemed normal. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. A few minutes later, I saw another shape on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was another stranded car, but as I got closer, I realized it was something else entirely. A large, twisted tree had fallen across the part of the road, its bare branches reaching out like skeletal hands. I slowed down, carefully staring around it, but as I did, Luna started growling again. Her fur bristled, and she pressed herself against the door, staring intently at the tree. "What is it, girl?" I asked, my voice shaky. I glanced toward the tree, half expecting to see that dark shape again, but there was nothing there, just the wind and the snow and the eerie silence of the canyon. I drove on, but the sense of being watched was overwhelming. I kept checking the rearview mirror, convinced that I'd see something following me, but the road behind me was empty, just a long stretch of darkness punctuated by the occasional glint of moonlight on the snow. Finally, I reached the outskirts of Casper. The lights of the town were a welcome sight, and for the first time all night, I felt a glimmer of relief. I pulled into the driveway of my parents' ranch, the familiar sight of the old farmhouse and barn calming my nerves. My dad came out to greet me, his expression turning to concern when he saw the look on my face. "What happened?" he asked as I stepped out of the car, Luna jumping out behind me. I told him everything: the dark shape in the grass, the man with the pipe, the strange feeling of being watched. He listened quietly, his brow furrowed, and when I was done, he put a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing," Trusting your instincts, he said. There's a lot of strange things out on the prairie, especially on nights like this. There it was again. Nights like this. I wanted to ask what he meant, but the exhaustion of the drive was catching up with me. He helped me carry my bags inside, and soon I was curled up in bed, Luna sleeping at my feet. But sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dark shape in the grass, the frantic man by the car, the twisted branches of the fallen tree. The next morning, my dad mentioned something that made my blood run cold. You know, Cedar Hollow has a bit of a reputation, he said over breakfast. They say it's a place where the lines between this world and the next get thin. Weird things happen out there. I stared at him, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth. What kind of weird things? He shrugged. People see things, hear things. Sometimes folks go missing. Most of it's probably just stories, but he trailed off, giving me a look that suggested he wasn't entirely convinced it was all just stories. I didn't press him for details. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. But as the days went by, I couldn't shake the feeling that what I'd experienced that night was more than just bad luck or coincidence. There was something out there on the prairie, something that didn't belong, and whatever it was, I was lucky to have gotten away. Every New Year's Eve, I think about that night. I think about the man with the pipe, the dark shape in the grass, and the strange, inexplicable sense of dread that followed me for miles. And every year, I make the same resolution: to trust my instincts and to never ever stop for strangers in the